The Midnight Visitor, Elysium Prime, was a marvel of interstellar engineering, a massive space station orbiting the twin moons of Cordaf 7, home to a bustling mix of species from across the galaxy. Some had come to trade, others to work, and some to hide from past mistakes. Ethan Cade had come for none of those reasons. He was here to cook. The position of a head chef on an interspecies station was, surprisingly, a coveted one. Food was more than sustenance. It was cultural diplomacy, a bridge between species with vastly different biology, customs, and taste preferences. Ethan had worked hard to earn his place in the Starfire Diner, one of the most renowned eateries on the station. After a grueling 16-hour shift, all he wanted was sleep. The station's simulated night cycle bathed his small quarters in a soft blue hue, the walls humming faintly with the distant vibrations of the artificial gravity generators. He collapsed onto his cot, exhaling deeply. Then came the knock. Light, hesitant, almost uncertain. Ethan groaned. Not now. It was the middle of the station's rest cycle. Who would come to his door at this hour? Rolling onto his feet, he rubbed his face, running a hand through his short-cropped dark hair before dragging himself to the door panel. The screen flickered to life, displaying the station's automated visitor ID system. Visitor. Unregistered. He frowned. Unregistered. That was unusual. The knock came again, slightly more urgent this time. Sighing, Ethan pressed the panel, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Standing there, framed in the dim corridor light, was a maid. Or at least, that's what her uniform suggested. A neatly pressed navy and white outfit, complete with a frilly apron. But Ethan immediately knew something was off. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue, almost shimmering under the corridor light, and her silver-white hair cascaded over her shoulders in loose waves. Two large, pointed ears peeked out from beneath the bonnet on her head. Her wide, luminescent violet eyes were fixed on him, her expression a mix of shock, hesitation, and something else he couldn't place. Ethan blinked. She wasn't just any alien. She was an Alari. And Alari didn't take menial jobs. They were known as a highborn species, rulers of one of the oldest and most prestigious civilizations in the sector. To see one dressed as a station maid was as bizarre as seeing a warlord working as a street performer. Can I help you?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. The Alari maid took a sharp breath, as if realizing she had been staring. She hesitated, her voice soft, melodic, but lined with uncertainty. "I apologize, human. I did not mean to intrude." She took a step back, but Ethan caught the way her hands trembled, the slight way she shifted her weight, ready to run. "Wait." She froze. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong. "You don't just wander into the crew quarters at this hour for no reason. What's going on?" She hesitated, glancing down the hallway as if expecting someone to appear. That's when Ethan noticed something else. Her maid uniform, pristine at first glance, was slightly torn at the edges. Small bruises marred the pale skin on her wrists, barely visible under the low light. She was hiding something. And suddenly, Ethan had a very bad feeling. "Please," she said quietly, her violet eyes pleading. "I need a place to hide. A stranger in the dark." Ethan wasn't stupid. The moment she said those words, his instincts screamed at him to shut the door, pretend he saw nothing, and go back to sleep. A random alien woman shows up at his door in the middle of the night, dressed as a maid, asking for a place to hide. That kind of thing got people killed. And yet, something in her expression stopped him. She looked desperate. Not the kind of desperation born from guilt or crime, but the kind that came from fear. Ethan exhaled sharply. "All right, get in." She didn't hesitate. The moment he stepped aside, she slipped through the doorway, moving with the kind of grace that told Ethan she wasn't just some random worker. As the door slid shut behind her, she finally let out a breath, shoulders sagging as if she had been holding tension for hours. "Thank you," she murmured. Ethan crossed his arms, eyeing her. "Start talking." She glanced up, startled. "What? You show up at my door in the dead of night, looking like you've been through hell, asking for a place to hide." He leaned against the wall, arms still folded. "You don't get to just sit there and act like this is normal." She pressed her lips together. A long silence stretched between them. Then, finally, "My name is Celisora," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "And I am being hunted." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Hunted? By who? She hesitated. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand to her collarbone, pulling aside the fabric of her uniform slightly. Ethan's breath caught. There, embedded just below her skin, was a small metallic implant, a tracking beacon. Not just any beacon, a slave tag. His stomach twisted. "You're a runaway." Celisora's hands trembled as she covered the implant again. "Yes." Ethan let out a slow breath. This just went from mildly suspicious to outright dangerous. Runaway slaves didn't just disappear into the crowds. They were hunted. The slavers in this sector were relentless. And if she was an **Alari, one of the highborn, then someone very powerful wanted her back. Which meant Ethan had just made himself a target. "I should throw you out right now," he said, voice careful. "You realize that, right?" She didn't beg, didn't plead. She just nodded. "I do." Something about her calm acceptance of that fact made Ethan's jaw tighten. "But you won't," she added quietly. Ethan exhaled. She was right. "Damn it. We're gonna need to remove that tracker," he muttered, rubbing his temples. Celisora's eyes widened. "You'll help me." Ethan glanced at her, this mysterious alien woman, dressed as a maid, but clearly anything but, standing in his room with nowhere else to go. He sighed. "Yeah," he said finally. "Looks like I am." And just like that, his quiet life as a chef on a space station was over. The price of freedom. Ethan stared at the pale blue-skinned Alari woman standing in his quarters, his mind racing. A runaway slave. On his doorstep. Of all the problems he expected to have tonight, burning a sauce, running out of spice stock, maybe getting yelled at by an impatient customer, this was not on the list. Celisora's violet eyes watched him carefully, waiting for his next move. The small tracking implant embedded just below her collarbone was unmistakable. Ethan had seen plenty of scumbags come through the Starfire diner, slavers included, and he'd learned to recognize those tiny markers of ownership. If she was caught, her fate was sealed. And if Ethan helped her, so was his. "We need to get that tracker out of you." Celisora hesitated. "You would help me?" Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, seems like I already made that decision when I let you in, huh?" She blinked, clearly caught off guard. Most people wouldn't hesitate to throw her out, let alone risk their own necks to help. "Thank you, Ethan." "Don't thank me yet." He moved to his storage compartment, pulling out a compact medical kit. "This is gonna hurt." She nodded, bracing herself as he gestured for her to sit on the edge of his bunk. Ethan flicked on the scalpel's microlaser, the small device glowing a soft blue as it calibrated. Removing a tracker was simple. Removing it without triggering its failsafe. That was the hard part. "Hold still." Celisora did, barely breathing as Ethan pressed the laser to her skin, cutting carefully around the implant. Her face remained stoic, but he could see the tense grip of her fingers on her knees. Almost there. A sudden beep echoed through the room. Ethan froze. "That wasn't me," Celisora whispered. His eyes darted to the tracker. It was pulsing. A warning signal. They had seconds before it sent a distress call. Ethan didn't hesitate. He gripped the implant with the extractor tool and yanked it free. Celisora let out a sharp breath, but before she could react, Ethan hurled the tiny device into a cooling unit nearby and slammed the door shut. A second later, the implant detonated, sending a small but violent pulse of energy through the sealed container. If it had still been inside her, she wouldn't have survived. The silence stretched between them, only the faint hiss of dissipating heat filling the air. Ethan exhaled. Well, that was fun. Celisora looked at him, her violet eyes wide with something between disbelief and gratitude. You didn't have to do that. Ethan scoffed. Yeah, well, I don't like slavers. And that was the truth. They sat there for a moment, the tension in the room still thick. Then the station-wide alarm blared. A hunter arrives. Ethan shot to his feet. No way, they shouldn't know yet. Celisora paled. Unless there's more than one tracker. Ethan cursed under his breath. Of course there was. Slavers were paranoid bastards. They always had a failsafe. The comm system crackled to life, a robotic voice echoing through the halls. Attention! Unauthorized individual detected in Sector 4B. Security lockdown initiated. Ethan's room was in 4B. Celisora gripped his arm. They're coming. His mind raced. There were only two ways out of crew quarters. The main hallway and the maintenance tunnels. The first one, a death sentence. The second, a gamble. Ethan grabbed his coat and motioned for Celisora to follow. Come on, we're going through the vents. She hesitated for just a second before nodding. Ethan moved fast, yanking open the access panel under his desk. The crawl space was tight, barely wide enough for a human, let alone an Alari with delicate highborn features. You good? He asked as she squeezed in behind him. I will manage, she whispered. Ethan secured the panel behind them just as the door to his quarters was forcibly opened. They could hear the boots. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Whoever was after her wasn't just some low-level thug. Check the room, a deep voice ordered. She's here. I can smell her. Celisora tensed. Ethan held his breath. He recognized that voice. Drelkvar, a bounty hunter, one of the most notorious in the sector. And Ethan had just made an enemy of him. The chase begins. Moving through the vent system was slow and brutal. The metal creaked under their weight, and every sound felt like a beacon to their pursuers. Celisora whispered, voice barely audible. Where are we going? Ethan adjusted his grip on the side rails, inching forward. There's an old maintenance shaft near the station's lower levels. Leads to the loading docks. If we can get there. A gunshot rang out. The vent exploded behind them, sending a wave of fire and shrapnel down the shaft. Celisora screamed as Ethan grabbed her wrist, yanking her forward. Move. The metal beneath them gave way. And suddenly, they were falling. A hard landing. They crashed through a rusted maintenance grate, tumbling onto the floor of an abandoned section of the station. Celisora coughed, struggling to her feet. Ethan groaned, his back protesting as he rolled onto his knees. You alive? He muttered. Barely, she replied, brushing dust from her uniform. Then she froze. Ethan followed her gaze and cursed, because they weren't alone. Across the dark corridor, figures emerged from the shadows. Not slavers, not bounty hunters, but something worse. You've got to be kidding me, Ethan muttered. Celisora swallowed hard. The Syndicate. Ethan let out a slow breath. The Syndicate, one of the most dangerous crime organizations in the galaxy. They ran black markets, illegal weapons deals, and slave trades. And judging by their expressions, they knew exactly who Celisora was. Well, this just keeps getting better. The Syndicate's game. The air in the abandoned sector of Elysium Prime was thick with tension. Dust hung in the dimly lit corridors, illuminated only by the occasional flickering emergency light. Ethan and Celisora stood frozen, their escape cut short by the shadowy figures emerging from the darkness ahead. They weren't slavers. They weren't bounty hunters. They were something worse. The Syndicate, a ruthless crime network that controlled the black market, illegal weapons trade, and underground slave operations across multiple star systems. If there was profit to be made in blood, the syndicate was there. Celisara inhaled sharply, her body stiff. They know me. Ethan didn't doubt it. At the head of the group, a tall, reptilian figure stepped forward, his long, armored coat swaying as he moved. His golden eyes gleamed under the dim lights, sharp teeth glinting in a smirk. Ethan recognized him instantly. Orion Vex, Ethan muttered under his breath. Son of a bitch. Vex was infamous. One of the syndicate's top enforcers, a brutal strategist with a reputation for never failing a job. If he was here, then the situation was far worse than Ethan had thought. Well, Vex's deep, gravelly voice filled the corridor. Ethan Cade. I can't say I expected to see you playing hero tonight. Ethan crossed his arms, keeping his stance casual, though his mind was working overtime to figure a way out of this. Funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you. Vex chuckled, the sound low and amused. You have a bad habit of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, human. His golden gaze flickered toward Celisara. And you. We've been looking for you for quite some time. Celisara's fists clenched. I am not for sale, she spat. Vex grinned. No, you're not. Not anymore. But you were supposed to be delivered to someone very, very important. And now, you're a problem. Ethan's stomach twisted. So it was true. Celisara wasn't just any runaway. She was valuable, important enough for slavers, bounty hunters, and now the syndicate to hunt her down, which meant she was dangerous to be around. And yet, Ethan had already made his choice. If you want her, Ethan said evenly, you'll have to go through me. The syndicate enforcer tilted his head, amusement flickering in his sharp eyes. Oh, that's a bold statement, Chef. Ethan's fingers twitched near his belt, where his concealed weapon rested. Celisara stood tall beside him, her violet eyes burning with defiance. Vex exhaled sharply, shaking his head. You misunderstand, Cade. If I wanted to take her, I would have done it already. No, I have a different proposition for you. A dangerous offer. Vex snapped his fingers. From behind him, a holographic screen flickered to life, projecting an image of the bounty posted earlier that night. Celisara's face stared back at them, alongside Ethan's. But the bounty had changed. The number was higher. 100,000 credits. Ethan's throat tightened. They doubled it. Vex smiled. No, I did. Celisara's breathing quickened. Why? Vex clasped his hands behind his back. Because, my dear, you're worth far more to me alive than dead. I could turn you in, sell you back to the highest bidder. But that would be boring. Instead, I'm going to make you an offer. Ethan's grip on his hidden weapon tightened. I'm not interested. You haven't even heard it yet. Vex chuckled. He stepped closer, his golden eyes gleaming. The two of you have proven to be very resourceful, escaping bounty hunters, evading security, and now you're standing here, alive, when most would be dead. Vex gestured toward Celisara. You're a stolen prize, a loose end that should have been tied up, but instead of dying quietly, you ran. And that makes you far more valuable to me. Ethan scowled. You want us to work for you. Vex grinned. Smart man. Yes, a job. You complete it. I wipe the bounty. You walk away, and the people chasing you suddenly forget you exist. Celisara stiffened. And if we refuse? Vex's smile widened. Then I turn you both in, and trust me, the people looking for you, they aren't as merciful as I am. No good options. Ethan's mind raced. There was no winning move here. If they refused, they were dead. If they fought, they were outnumbered. If they ran, they wouldn't get far. Which meant, what's the job? Ethan asked. Celisara whipped her head toward him. You can't be serious. I'm stalling for time. Ethan murmured. Just trust me. Vex nodded approvingly. Smart. Very smart. The job is simple, really. There's a shipment coming in. Something my associates need to disappear before it reaches its destination. I want you two to make sure that happens. Ethan narrowed his eyes. And what's in the shipment? Vex's smile didn't falter. Let's just say, it's something the galactic authorities would be very interested in. Ethan swore under his breath. This wasn't just a job. It was a setup. If they got caught, they'd take the fall for it. If they refused, they'd be turned in. Celisara's breathing was shallow, her fingers curling into fists. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. He had a split second to decide. Then, he turned to Vex. And he made his choice. Fine. Vex's smile widened. Good answer. The game begins. Vex snapped his fingers, and his men stepped aside, clearing a path through the dark corridors. You have 48 hours, he said. Get it done, and your bounties disappear. Fail. And well, you won't have to worry about your future anymore. Ethan didn't respond. He grabbed Celisara's wrist and pulled her forward, past the syndicate enforcers. They walked in silence for several long moments, their hearts pounding. When they were far enough away, Celisara hissed under her breath. You actually agreed. Ethan exhaled. I agreed to survive. Celisara glared at him. We can't do this. We'll be playing right into their hands. Ethan looked at her, his green eyes sharp. I know. That's why we're not going to do the job. Celisara stilled. Then what? Ethan's jaw tightened. We're going to steal a ship and get the hell off this station before the 48 hours are up. Celisara blinked, then smirked. Now that's a plan I can get behind. And just like that, the game changed.